From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. This is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. addressed the members of the United States Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or US-ASEAN Business Council during a courtesy call at the President's Hall, Malacañang Palace on Wednesday, August 9, 2023. The US-ASEAN Business Council is a non-profit organization established in 1984 that conducts research and analysis in the ASEAN member countries in terms of economic, financial, political, social, and environmental conditions. President Marcos underscored that the meeting is significant in strengthening the bilateral relations between the Philippines and United States, anchored in the continuous promotion of peace and protection of national interest in the Indo-Pacific region. Discussions in the meeting center on the concrete steps in upholding socio-economic cooperation, including the sectors of agriculture, clean energy, infrastructure, climate change, digital connectivity, and post-pandemic recovery, among others. Here is Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Thank you all very much. Welcome to those of you who are old hands in the Philippines. Welcome back to the Philippines, and those of you who have come here for the first time, welcome to Manila. Welcome to the Philippines. We have arranged perfect weather for you, by the way. It took a good deal of work, but we managed to stop the rain for this meeting. Again, I am very happy to be able to welcome all of the US-ASEAN Business Council members who are here with us today. There is a great deal that I think we can use these meetings for. There's a great deal, I think, that we can achieve. We have made great strides in strengthening our bilateral relations, for example, with the US. Our engagements are now grounded on a two-pronged, very simple foreign policy approach, and that is the promotion of peace and, of course, the protection of the national interest. By shoring up our individual and collective capabilities, we are able to advance our countries as well as the Indo-Pacific region's security, stability, and economic prosperity. As a testament to the positive momentum in our bilateral relations, President Biden and I have identified concrete steps to ensure that our alliance and partnership remains relevant, responsive to current emerging challenges in the defense, security, and economic spheres. The evolution of geopolitics and the global economy have lumped all of these elements together. We cannot approach any of these elements separately without seeing the effects that one has on the other. The U.S. remains the leading strategic trading and investment partner in the Philippines. We certainly value the U.S. contributions to our economic development and our post-pandemic recovery. And we are fortunate that our economic goals complement those of the U.S. And since taking office, I have made it clear that supporting agricultural and food security, promoting energy security, transitioning to clean energy, boosting trade, and increasing the resilience of our supply chains, enhancing connectivity and digitalization, amongst others, are priority areas that will set the direction of our economic policies. To that end, I have called for the enhanced Philippine-U.S. economic engagement to boost two-way trade and investment, especially in critical sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture, clean energy, including nuclear energy, green metals and critical minerals, IT, BPO, and semiconductors, all while building economic resilience in the face of climate change. The pandemics and the humanitarian response and other security challenges. I certainly welcome the U.S. government's commitment to follow through with major economic initiatives, and it is my hope that we will be able to see them come into fruition in the succeeding months. We hope to cement the Philippines' position as a strategic partner of the United States in terms of processing critical minerals for battery applications. And we hope to move the Philippines from the upstream to the midstream in battery development and supply chain. I hope that with your support, the Philippines can avail itself of the incentives under the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act to allow us to strengthen the global supply chains of critical materials. I had promising discussions with Senator Tammy Duckworth just yesterday, actually, on this very issue. And we will continue to discuss this with the U.S. at the state level. The Philippines is actively participating in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework and the APEC meetings leading up to the Leaders Summit in San Francisco in November. I look forward to joining fellow APEC leaders in California later this year. This will be my third trip to the U.S. since I assumed office. With energy security high in the economic agenda, we are particularly interested in sustainable land, water, and ocean solutions that align with our climate goals and support our plans to transform the Philippines into an upper middle income country by the year 2025. All efforts to increase the number of power sources lean towards clean energy. That being the case, I am interested in the potential of nuclear energy, especially in light of new technologies and innovations that allow the use of smaller scale modular nuclear reactors, other advanced reactor technologies that we see as being safer from the more efficient than the more traditional designs of nuclear power production. Leading the charge are our ongoing discussions with the United States on the 123 agreement, which will provide the legal framework for civil and nuclear-related investments, particularly in nuclear power in our country. Together with the United States and other partners, especially the private sector, we will build the necessary infrastructure to help power a growing economy as we transition to clean and renewable energy. We recognize the rule of the rule that we have set for ourselves, that is the slow transition, and it is slow. We all had great hopes that the transition to renewables would be easy or simple. It turns out that that's not going to be the case, and we have to be realistic in this regard. And so the rule we have applied for ourselves is, first of all, is that we must be able to provide sufficient power for the development of our industries, sufficient power so that we can expand the economy, and it must be accompanied by a continuing effort to move our power sources from the traditional fossil fuels to renewable sources of energy. I hope to see more engagements involving both our governments and private sectors, especially in mobilizing financial resources for investment in key areas such as critical infrastructure, research and development, and human capital development. I hope we can count on your support for this. I cannot stress more how important private sector support has been to all the planning that we have done. One of the key features of the economic policy since I took office is that we have initiated, we started with what we call a whole of government approach, seeing as the problems that we face post-pandemic and with Ukraine, with the developing and evolving situation in the war in Ukraine, we have put front and center in terms of our plans of transforming the economy. Strong partnerships with the private sector. We started, as I said, with a whole of government approach, wherein government approached every problem, every challenge, every new program not with a single department, not with a single agency, but bringing to bear as many of those agencies that may be relevant to that particular program. And that has been a multiplier effect. So we have extended this now to what we call the whole of nation approach. And that's why the private sector has been recognized as a critical partner if we are to continue the transformation of our economy. My economic managers and I have been pursuing and implementing reforms to attract more foreign investment and expand commerce not only domestically, but of course also globally. I'm happy to report that the Philippines is on track not only for economic recovery, but to achieving an upper middle economic status within a couple of years. Despite global economic headwinds, our GDP post-pandemic defied predictions through sound economic and fiscal policies, responsive reforms, and an enabling economic environment that drove commerce and domestic consumption. We would like to continue the trend of growth in terms of the growth of our economy, our GDP, in the coming years. We have done reasonably well in the past year or so, but there are some new forces that have come into play, not least of which is the canceling of the Black Sea Agreement by Russia in terms of the export of agricultural products. And the effect has been, once again, has reached all the way across the globe, and we are beginning to feel the effect of that as food prices continue to be volatile, and unfortunately volatile to be higher in terms of pricing. And we have identified agriculture as a priority, the first priority actually. Not only because it is absolutely necessary that the state is able to feed its own people, its own populace, and to provide that food supply in a pricing structure that is actually affordable to people. And that is, but beyond the primordial mission of feeding the populace, the economic analysts have made it very clear that any transformation and any industrialization cannot really take place unless our agricultural sector is secure, our agricultural sector is robust, and our agricultural sector is efficient. And to that end, we have slowly been working to improve the value chain of our agricultural sector, all the way from research and development to providing financing, providing the inputs to our farmers, providing the new technologies, to the new techniques and new strategies for farming. Of course, we have encountered problems, of course, in stress, especially in the livestock, because of the prevalence and the contagion of the swine flu and the avian flu. But these are the things that we are working towards. And again, the private sector has been an absolutely critical partner in that regard. So, despite headwinds, our GDP post-pandemic has been able to do reasonably well because of all that we have done. We hope to continue that growth trend in the Philippines in terms of our GDP. We were originally, the estimate of the World Bank originally for the Philippines was 5% growth for this year. That has been upgraded to 6%. There are new shocks that have come in, but I think we can take measures to continue the growth rate of our economy. Well, these came from aggressive infrastructure projects. We have undertaken perhaps the largest infrastructure program that the Philippines has seen, especially in terms of monies that are funding that has been appropriated by our legislature for this year and for the next year. We have reformed the bureaucracy so as to be more attuned to the way that we do business today. I always say that the people have said that we would like to recover the economy. And I immediately disabuse them of that. I do not want to recover the economy. I do not want to be where we were in September 2019. I want to be where we should be for 2026, for 2028. We have to recognize that it is a different situation that we are facing now. The world has changed. Pandemic, the COVID changed everything, and we must resign ourselves to that difficult fact, and that's what we are trying to do. To look forward and to see how the evolution of our new economies are going, and in the region, in ASEAN, for example. The leaders have come to a consensus, very clear consensus, that what we really need to do, if we are to regain the leadership in the economic development for the rest of the world, as we had in 2019, 2018, where we were the most here, this region was the most aggressive in terms of trade, in terms of growth. To return to that, the very first thing that we must do is improve our connectivity. Now, we tend to think, when we say connectivity, we think digital. Well, that applies as well. But physical connectivity now is the key. Connectivity via air, by land, by the sea. And that is what we are hoping to achieve in the next meetings with ASEAN, amongst the leaders, amongst our business partners. And this, I think, is the right. I think that we have made the right decision in that regard. I think we are going down the correct road, and by we, I mean as ASEAN. That we must develop first the infrastructure. We must develop first the basic bones of our economy, in the way that is required by the new global economy post-pandemic. So these are the elements that we have tried to put together to continue the growth rate of the Philippines. We decided very early on that although we worry about our debt to GDP ratio in the Philippines, as it stands, it's about 63%, and that's a little high for us, and it is not ideal. I would say we are doing better than our neighbors, perhaps, but nonetheless, it's still something that we need to be looking at. And the way that we believe we can pull ourselves out of that debt ratio and improve that debt ratio is through growth. And that is why we are working very hard to continue with that growth trend. We are, however, beset by the problems of inflation. And that is why the monetary policy has been quite robust and increasing. But then we worry about the constriction of the economy by very high interest rates. And so this is something that we have to balance. But in terms of the ordinary man on the street, inflation, of course, is they do not worry about your debt to GDP ratio. They just know that the prices of everyday goods, products that they need for their everyday life is just going up. Fuel is going up. We just had another increase today. So these are the balances that we are having to. These are the balls that we have juggling in the air. I think, and I don't think it is just the Philippines that is in that condition. I think it is really the rest of the world. We all have to try and find new ways we all have to try to find new ways to address the problems that we are facing, as the nature of those problems is different from what they were a few years ago. And the other overwhelming factor now, especially here in the Philippines, are the effects of climate change. I have said it before, I think it bears repeating, that no discussion, certainly at my level, can be had and can be complete without touching upon climate change. It affects everything. It affects our healthcare system. It affects our infrastructure program. It affects our educational program. Who goes to school? Who doesn't go to school? Who can? Every little sector in our society, the everyday life of our people, maybe they do not know it, but from my point of view, sitting here where I am, I can see that every aspect of everyday life is affected by climate change. And the Philippines has the dubious distinction of being one of the most vulnerable when it comes to the effects of climate change. And so that has factored in a great deal to all of our planning and all that we do to improve the economy. And I must say that from where we began, there has been I'm talking now not only about the Philippines, but even ASEAN. From where we stand, we can see that the developed countries, and for lack of a better term, the developed countries are being willing to take on the load to mitigate the effects of climate change. It is the calculation, the formulae that we have to decide upon. We're not yet there, but I can see that there's progress in that regard. But I think it is so important that it bears repeating that climate change really enters into every aspect. If we're going to talk about the economy, I think I need not explain to you, ladies and gentlemen, how that has become a major factor in all our thinking. And from a ordinary citizen's point of view, it's the same thing, that they have to be able to adjust. We have resigned ourselves to going past 1.5 degrees in terms of global warming. We have not been able to hold it back for many reasons. So we now try to look at mitigation and adaptation. And for that, we certainly need the synergies that will come about by alliances, partnerships, arrangements with our ASEAN partners, and beyond that, of course, our American partners, who have been playing a very large part in that aspect of our development. So I recognize the critical role that the United States and American businesses have played in advancing a robust and inclusive economic growth in the Philippines, not only in this period, but for a very long time now. I invite the members of the esteemed council to continue being valuable partners of the Philippines. Well, let us push for greater economic engagement between our two countries, for our mutual benefit, for the prosperity, especially of the region. Thank you. And I wish you all a productive and enjoyable stay in the Philippines. Maraming salamat po.
And you just heard Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other presidential news, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. recognized the efforts of Filipino athletes who brought recognition to the country during the 32nd Southeast Asian or SEA Games and the 12th ASEAN Para Games as he led the awarding of incentives to the medalists at the ceremonial hall in Malacañang Palace on Wednesday, August 9, 2023. Over 900 athletes competed in the SEA Games and ASEAN Para Games in Cambodia last May and June 2023. The Philippines placed fifth in the overall medal tally for both sporting events, winning a total of 58 and 34 gold medals, respectively. Officials from the Philippine Sports Commission or PSC and the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation or PAGCOR joined President Marcos in the ceremony. Here is Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Thank you very much to our Philippine Sports Commission Chairman Richard Bachman, for your kind introduction. Senator Francis Tolentino, who has joined us for this afternoon. PAGCOR Chairman and CEO Al Tenco. The Philippine Olympic Committee President Abraham Tolentino. Philippine Paralympic Committee President Michael Barredo, who you may not know is actually a schoolmate of mine. And he has used it to his great advantage to bring all of these issues that before were not really in the fore, especially when it came to Paralympics, when it came to disabled people. Marami siyang nagawa. So I'm glad to see him continuing in that vein. To of course, our athletes who have represented our country and have brought pride and honor to all Filipinos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Malacañang Palace. Good afternoon. Today, we are fortunate to welcome the latest in a long list of triumphant heroes in Philippine sports. Athletes from the Philippines have surpassed the competition and brought out the best version of themselves, becoming exemplars of sporting prowess for our nation and the rest of the world. But I think the most important thing that we demonstrate, that you demonstrated, as you competed in these tournaments, in these games, was to show the strength of the Filipino spirit, the grace of the Filipino character, and the passion of the Filipino heart. And that is what comes out with the results, with what you have been able to do, with admittedly limited resources. I am always a little embarrassed when I see that we are not supporting our athletes and our coaches and our trainers and all the support groups, even the families. Alam naman natin, hindi kayo naging champion na nag-iisa. At maraming tumulong para kayo ay maging champion. Maraming nagsakripisyo. Yun na nga, yung ating mga coach, yung ating sino yung mga nagpapakain sa inyo, mga magulang ninyo. So it seems that what we in government, considering the honor and the pride that you bring to the Philippines, it seems that it is not commensurate for the great service that you do to our country and to our people. Kaya naman, nagkataon, alam ko't na darating kayo ngayong araw, kaya naman nagkataon nung linggo, ng gabi, andito po ang ating idol, si Senator Manny Pacquiao. At meron kaming pinapanood na palabas, yung mga ibang yung mga ibang para-athletes nandito rin, and who joined the Paralympics. They were here and we did a tribute to our athletes. At kasama ko si Senator Manny Pacquiao at pinag-uusapan namin ito. Sabi ko, dahil atleta ka talaga, naintindihan mo kung ano yung pangangailangan. At ako, sa makalawa, ay bibigyan ko ng premyo o incentive, kung ano man ang tawag, sa ating mga atleta na nanalo, na magandang naging resulta. At sa palagay ko naman, tama rin naman. Dahil kayo naman ay nag-perform kayo, hindi naman nangyayari yan na hindi kayo naghirap, hindi kayo nagsakripisyo. Ngunit sabi ko, hindi lang naman ang mga athlete ang nandyan. Hindi naman lang ang athlete. Kaya gumaling yan dahil na-train yan ng mahusay, dahil may coach yan, dahil masarap, dahil masustansya ang kinakain, dahil meron siyang access sa mga training facilities, meron siyang meron lahat ng pangangailangan para nga maging champion. Kaya gumawa kami ng paraan at gagawa kami ng plano na susuportahan natin, lalo na basta Philippine team na athletes at saka coaches at saka trainers at saka mga nutritionists at saka pati na yung mga driver, pati na yung lahat. Kasi kailangan nyo yan ang hirap paano kayo magte-train. Hindi kayo makarating dun sa yung NLEX, hindi kayo makapunta dun sa pinagpupuntahan ninyong stadium. Kaya kailangan natin tulungan kayo. At kaya naman dahil dami natin, darating kayo rito, kagaya ngayong hapon. At lagi natin sinasabi, pinagmamalaki namin kayo. Totoo naman. Pinagmamalaki namin kayo. Dapat naman may susuklian naman namin ang inyong ginawang sakripisyo, ang inyong dinala na dangal para sa ating mahal na Pilipinas. Kaya asahan ninyo na sa administrasyon na ito ay gagawin natin ang lahat para masuportahan natin at ipalabas natin ang kagalingan, ang husay ng ating atleta para makita. Kung iniisip ko, sinasabi ko nga sa sarili ko, karamihan dyan hindi natin natulungan. Talagang kung saan-saan na lang kumukuha ng suporta, nakakahiya. Pero ganun pa rin ang resulta, ang ganda-ganda pa rin ang resulta. Ang titibay pa rin, nakaka-proud pa rin. Kaya isipin ninyo kung tulungan natin, isipin ninyo kung suportahan natin. Yun ang pangarap ko, na mangyari yan at masabi natin na dinala kayo namin sa mas mataas na standard para sa inyong sa bawat inyong sport at napalabas natin ang tunay na galing ng atletang Pilipino. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon sa inyo.
And you just heard Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will participate in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC Economic Leaders Meeting in San Francisco, California in November this year. This will be the second time Marcos will attend the APEC Summit. Marcos participated in the 29th APEC Summit in Thailand in November last year. The APEC is a regional economic forum established in 1989 to leverage the growing interdependence of the Asia-Pacific. This year, the U.S. will chair the forum, which will be held on November 14 to 16 at the Moscone Center West in San Francisco, California. Focusing on creating economic opportunity, the APEC Summit will feature a lineup of dynamic and diverse speakers who will highlight the potential of collaboration to build a future that is centered on sustainability, inclusion, resilience, and innovation. Marcos is among the economic leaders who are expected to speak at the summit, according to APEC's official website. The president said he would advance the country's energy security interests when he joins his fellow APEC leaders during the economic bloc's gathering. Marcos noted that there are ongoing discussions with the U.S. on the 123 agreement, which will provide the legal framework for civil and nuclear-related investments, particularly nuclear power in the Philippines. He expressed optimism that partnerships with the U.S. and other countries, especially the private sector, would lead to the establishment of the necessary infrastructure for the planned transition to clean and renewable energy. The APEC summit brings together 21 economies from around the Asia Pacific to collaborate on the shared goal of creating a more open, resilient, sustainable, and peaceful future for the people of the world's most dynamic region. APEC's 21 member economies are Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, China, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Peru, the Philippines, Russia, Singapore, Taiwan, Thailand, the US, and Vietnam.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, there is no existing agreement between the Philippines and China to remove BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin Shoal. That's according to Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. Marcos issued the statement after China on August 7 claimed that the Philippine government had repeatedly promised to tow away the grounded warship from the Ayungin Shoal, a feature within the Kalayaan Island group less than 200 nautical miles of Palawan. He added that he is repealing any commitment should there be an existing agreement between the Philippines and China on the supposed removal of the BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin Shoal. In a laging handa briefing, National Security Council Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya said there is no commitment from the Philippine government to remove BRP Sierra Madre from the Ayungin Shoal. Malaya also stressed that BRP Sierra Madre was deployed and stationed in Ayungin Shoal in 1999 to show China that the Philippines has control over it. Foreign Affairs spokesperson Maria Teresita Daza on Tuesday said Manila had decided to deploy a permanent station on Ayungin Shoal in 1999 in response to China's illegal occupation of Panganiban Reef or the Mischief Reef in 1995. China on Monday renewed its call on the Philippines to remove the BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin Shoal, saying the Philippines fails to fulfill its promise. Prior to China's demand, the Chinese Coast Guard on August 5 blocked and used water cannon against the Philippine Coast Guard or PCG's resupply mission to Ayungin Shoal. Marcos, in a media interview on Monday, said the government would come up with a comprehensive action to respond to China's dangerous maneuvers and illegal use of water cannons against the PCG vessels in Ayungin Shoal. Marcos also maintained that the Philippines will continue to assert its sovereignty over the West Philippine Sea, noting that Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo had already sent a note, verbale, to China following the latest incident in Ayungin Shoal.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA has placed the entire Libya under a single crisis alert level 3 or voluntary repatriation. The decision updates the separate alert levels imposed in 2019 on Tripoli and areas within 100-kilometer radius at alert level 4 or mandatory repatriation, and on areas outside the 100-kilometer radius at alert level 2 or restricted phase. The DFA said that while the political and security conditions in Libya remain fragile, there have been significant improvements in the country since 2019. The department also stated that there are ongoing efforts primarily under the auspices of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya to unite the two governments in Libya through the conduct of elections and to unify and strengthen the country's security apparatus. The DFA noted the overseas Filipino workers or OFWs in Libya, currently at around 2,300, also perceive the country as safe and secure. Despite this, the agency said labor cases have already decreased from 411 in 2022 to 305 as of June 2023. The resolution of these labor cases may be attributed to the Philippine Embassy in Libya's conduct of job site visits and labor dialogues and representations with companies and relevant government agencies. Even with the transfer last month of assistance to nationals functions for OFWs to the Department of Migrant Workers, the DFA affirms or reaffirms that in the absence of a resident migrant workers migrant workers office in Tripoli, the DFA will continue to monitor the situation and be responsible for responding to appeals for assistance of Filipinos working and residing in Libya.
Dateline Malacañang.
News stories, Philippine Department of the Interior and Local Government or DILG Secretary Benjamin Abalos Jr. on Wednesday urged all barangays to set up their own violence against women or VOW desk to help women and children who are victims of sexual violence. In Memorandum Circular 2023-104, Abalos said provincial, city, and municipal local government units or LGUs are expected to provide technical and financial assistance to barangays, develop and distribute information materials to raise public awareness on VOW, and how to report incidents and seek help, and provide recognition and incentives to barangays with exemplary performance in addressing gender-based violence issues. Abalos said village chairpersons must enact or update an ordinance providing support for the establishment and sustained operations of VOW desk and designate a barangay VOW desk officer trained in handling gender-sensitive cases, preferably a female sangguniang barangay member or a female barangay tanod or village watch person. He said the barangay VOW desk must be within or near the barangay hall or close to the office of the chairperson with necessary resources to assist victim survivors such as equipment and supplies for documenting cases and preserving evidence, communication equipment, and first aid kit, among others. Section 9 of Republic Act 9710 or Magna Carta of Women and Section 12 of its implementing rules and regulations mandate all LGUs to establish VOW desk in every barangay to assist VOW victims, respond to gender-based violence cases brought to the barangay, and address other forms of abuse committed against women.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Philippine Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE on Wednesday hailed the efforts of the National Council Against Child Labor or NCACL and its social partners in fighting child labor. This after the special release on working children's situation published by the Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA on July 25 recorded a decline in the number of child laborers in 2022 at 828,000 children who were engaged in child labor in 2022 out of the 1.48 million working children in the country. This translated to an 11.4% drop from 935,000 child laborers out of a total of 1.37 million working children in 2021. Under the country's laws, the minimum employable age in the country is 15. Hence, children 15 to below 18 years of age are legally allowed to get employed or work provided that they are not engaged in child labor. Child labor is any work or economic activity performed by a child that subjects him or her to any form of exploitation or is harmful to his or her health and safety, physical, mental, and psychosocial development. Dole also identified the agriculture sector as still the top industry with the most number of child laborers and tagged Soxargen with the highest child labor incidence. Aside from the continuous push for anti-labor or anti-child labor campaigns, the NCACL, which is being chaired by the department, approved the Philippine Program Against Child Labor or PPACL strategic framework covering the period 2023 to 2028 in March 2023. Philippine Labor Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma said this reinforces the department's commitment to end child labor together with other members of the NCACL as its social and international development partners. Laguesma added that they will continue to strengthen its child labor prevention and elimination program, the department's contribution to the PPACL, by employing a strategic and holistic approach to address child labor, especially those working in hazardous environments.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that concludes today's edition of Dateline Malacañang. Don't forget to follow the social media accounts or pages of Radyo Pilipinas World Service for important news updates. This has been Steph Vicente. Good day and stay safe, everyone.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.